Wait for you to go live and I can just.
All right, we are live and in charge. We had a little bit of bandwidth problems here, but we are now started. This is the September monthly meeting of the Google Developer Group of the Triangle. We're going to be looking at Chrome and DevTools, and also, if we have time, some Chrome apps. Jared Cirilla? I don't know that I've pronounced your last name.
Cirilla.
Cirilla?
It's really hard.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not good with names as it is.
Don't worry, nobody can get it right.
Is here, and we have a lively audience trying to get on the internet, but we're going to go ahead and do this, and I'll let Jared take it over.
There you go.
Okay, we're set.
Cool. So this is first time I've given this talk, but this is scheduled to give this talk at NC DevCon in a couple weeks. So I wanted to first off give myself an early deadline, so I would make sure that I was working on it. And basically what I want to talk about is just go over some things that you may or may not know about the Chrome DevTools. So I hope in the talk I'll talk some about different tools, give you different tips, and even a few tricks on how to do some things that are fun or goofy or whatever that you may not have done before. Hopefully, you probably already know some of these. Hopefully you don't know all of them, and everyone walks away learning something about the DevTools that they didn't know about. There's just a lot going on in them. They're always adding something new to them, so it's almost impossible to keep up with everything. And it can really just improve your front-end development workflow if you start to learn them a little bit better. So before we talk about any of the specific tips, I wanted to go over the different channels that exist in Chrome development. So there's actually 4 channels that they have, and 3 of them are all sort of grouped together there. That's the stable, beta, and dev channels, because if you install one of those, you can only have one of those installed on a system at a time. So the stable is what most people are going to run when they download Chrome. That major updates released every 6 weeks. It's the standard version. Beta is sort of one step ahead of stable. Again, it gets major updates every 6 weeks, but it gets smaller updates maybe every week. But you can only have one of these first 3 installed at any given time. And then the dev channel, which is the first tested version that they've actually spent time testing for any build. And it gets updated 2 to 3 times per week. And then Canary has a different icon. It's sort of gold. And you can have Canary co-installed in one of the other 3. So you can have both Canary and the stable version on your system at the same time. So Canary is the bleeding edge. It's released daily. It's untested. Any given day it could be broken. But Canary is where you're also going to find the latest features. That's where everything goes in before anything else. And so a lot of developers, since you can have it co-installed with the stable branch, they'll run both Canary and stable at the same time, or Canary and beta if that's what they need to run. So that's really what we'll focus on. There's a few slides here that are tips that are specific to Canary that don't exist in the stable version. You'll see that Canary icon on the slide if I'm covering something that's in Canary. That means that it may or may not make it into stable at some point in the future, because some features they pull, some of them stay around. So I broke this down into sort of 4 major sections. First one is talking about things that are more focused on the design aspects in Chrome. And what you can do from a design side. There's really a lot to do. A lot of it ends up leaving you in this Elements tab inside of the DevTools when you're working on the design. So one thing that you may not be aware of that's sort of nifty is you can actually drag and drop elements inside of the Elements pane. This is me having problems with my keyboard or mouse, but you can drag and drop elements to rearrange them on the screen. And in addition to just straight drag and drop, you can also cut and paste. Yeah, I haven't done this before, so I don't know if this will work successfully. Oh, I can put it inside of it, but so. But yeah, you can rearrange stuff dynamically on here without having to re-render the page. So that's sort of a nifty little feature that they have. In addition, and this is one that even as I was talking with Luke, who's a really good front-end developer, didn't realize until just recently, is you can navigate the DOM in the Elements tab just using the arrow keys. And you'll see the stuff get highlighted. So, and then if you're going up and down, you can also go hit the left and right keys to expand and collapse sections. If you're just trying to navigate around and find some element in it or figure out the structure, that's a very quick and easy way to do it without having to click around all over the place. In addition, when editing almost any string containing a number in the Elements tab, the arrow keys can be used to increment or decrement the value. And this works in even surprising places you may not expect. So for example, here's this hex value for the color of that almost over there. Let me unselect it so you can see the change. And I can increment and decrement the numbers, or if I hold shift, it'll go up by 10 at a time. And then on numbers that are more like, not hex, I guess, but decimal numbers, if you hold Alt, you can change them by 0.1 at a time. So that works really well if you're trying out different, say, EM settings and you're trying to find out what the right spacing is for something. You can just sort of play with it. And that also works well beyond where you might think it would. So for example, when I said almost anywhere, here I've got some classes, and this one I called point 1, but really it's my third point on it. I can just increment that right there, and it'll find the number in that and increment it. It doesn't work in text elements. That's one of the only restrictions that I've run into for that. Yeah?
Just wondering if it matters with the numbers at the end or beginning, you get 1 point instead of 0.1, or would that make any sense?
No, it would have worked either way. I mean, basically what it'll do is just try and find the digit or something that it thinks is a digit and work with it. So. You can actually directly edit the computed values or the box model. If you're trying to change something, so it's like this guy, maybe I want him to have more padding.
Go back. I think your screen share may be turned off.
Yeah, I was afraid something happened. All right, let's try it again.
That it hide on that. I think that may have been what happened.
Okay.
It looks like you're adding additional values.
Yeah, it's doing something weird right now. I don't know what's up with that.
Well, no, that didn't do it. It says your screen sharing, but it's not.
It's very strange. And I don't know, this could just be a canary thing. But yeah, it's that's operating in a different fashion than I would expect right now. Oh, hold on. I forgot, that's the difference. Is you actually have to, I think, hit the button to accept your change. Oh. No idea. That's Chrome sending me for a loop. Funny, it worked yesterday. I am running Canary, so it could be something else that they changed, or I could just be doing something wrong right now. But
Probably said, hey, someone's giving a presentation. We should probably mess that up.
let's break Canary. Yeah. Exactly. That is very strange. It is totally adding new. You see that?
Huh.
There we go. At least we got the spacing that time.
Wonder why it has 6 values for the same value.
I have no idea. It might be.
It's just overriding it, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's possible that what they're doing is intentional, because, and I don't think I cover this, but I'll cover something similar later and then try and see if it might be related. They might be playing in the same area. Yeah. Oh, did?
Yeah.
Same way?
Yep. It's not a bug, it's a feature.
Yeah.
It's a feature.
Well, they might. Yeah, I'll cover what it might be.
Maybe they want you to see what the previous value was.
But another nifty thing is when using the color picker to match a color, if you move here, I'll go back to here. I need added green elements to that one too, just because I think it works better. But so let's say we want to pick a different color for that almost text that we have over here. Oops. You can click on the color over here to bring up the color picker. But one nifty part about it is if you hover over the actual page, it'll bring up a magnifying glass. It'll let you select any pixel on the screen to match the color to.
Oh. So you just click on any given pixel and it'll
now give it that color. So
you know,
it's got like a gray, and that's because around these letters it's not perfectly white, right? So there's a smooth and whatnot.
So you don't have to go out and install one of these color picker plugins like I did.
That's what I yeah.
Yep. Not if you're trying to pull something off that page necessarily right now. I mean, you have to, if you want to do that, and you didn't have an element to do it, you have to go add your own little style thing here or something, right?
Yeah.
So it might still be worth it to save you the time, but I've had those installed in the past as well. This is a really nifty one too, is you can shift click on a color. You have to click on the actual square in the sidebar, and it will change it between the different formats that the browser supports. So if you're looking over here, now it gives you the RGB value of it. And now to give you, I don't even know what this representation is.
Hue, saturation, and luminosity, something like that.
Bravo. So
I'm not a designer, but I play one on television.
yeah, if you need it in a different representation, just shift clicking will give you the different color representations. So that's a few of the features I wanted to talk about related to design and working with design. Now let's get into the development side, which is probably where I spend more of my time. The first one is keyboard shortcuts. I mean, I don't know a lot of these, but they're really valuable, so it's useful to learn them. So I've got a list of them here. Probably the most useful one that I didn't know, and I feel silly for having not known it, is just the escape key. So if you're over in the dev tools, the escape key will hide your console or pull it up. And since I live in the console and always want it there, but it takes up so much screen space, you can just hide it really quickly. Incredibly useful. Then if you want to navigate between panes in the dev tool, you can command or control on a Windows, and the angle brackets or square brackets will navigate between the panes. And I think, let me check this. I think if you do shift, no, something different. There's also a way to jump to the last pane that you were in, but so that's useful to just live on the keyboard so you don't have to jump off. If you don't know this, you absolutely should. So even though this is a pretty obvious one, if you haven't done it, I included it, is Control P to search by file name. So, or Command P. And it'll bring up a list of all your,
I didn't know that one.
it'll bring up all your files and you can just search them right there.
It says it right there, and I don't think I ever noticed.
Boom. And pull up any file with just a Command P and then find them. So that's that. Like I live with that. I don't go try and find stuff over here on the left navigation at all. Everything's just Command P, pull up a file.
So you can pull up that Command P and type in .css and search CSS.
And you see all your CSS files. Yep.
I've never seen that.
Yep.
That's cool. It's funny that you're right. When you close all the things out, you see Command files.
Like I feel really dumb.
The first time somebody showed me that, I was like, "What?" It used to be that Command O or Control O also works, but I prefer P because that's the same mapping in Sublime Text. So I'm trying to.
Right.
If you want to search everything, search all your sources. On a Mac, it's Command Option F, and it'll search through everything, give you a search. So, like, now it'll find all the KBD references and CSS and stuff that I have. That's really handy. Control G, and this is actually, you can do this with Command P as well, or but this is Control G on all platforms. We'll bring up the same find file dialog, but with a semi or a colon at the start, and then you can type in a line number, and it'll jump you to that line number in the file. The same thing can be done with like Command P and just putting the semicolon at the start or the colon at the start.
Can you do Command P and do a file in a colon? Like, does that?
Need to know.
You can. Wait. You can do this. You can do Command Option F. So bring up this search down here, and you can do File. Search only that file.
Okay. So you can do filtered. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
You can do filtered ones down there. I've never tried. I've toyed around to see if there were other options up in this, and I've never found anything beyond just the colon option. But I've tried like @ which is a common one for methods, but I haven't found anything there. This one's useful. I didn't find it. I thought it was sort of silly for a long time, but this will toggle into the inspect element mode when you're in the browser window. It's Command Option P or Control Shift or C or Control Shift C. But recently I did find a good use for it, which is it's useful to inspect an element that's hidden, like it only appears on hover, for example, and you don't know where to find it in your code. So you can do like the Command Option or Command Option P, and then you'll bring up your Finder right here, so it'll jump to that over there, so you don't have to right-click and maybe have the hover disappear or something. So if you're hovered over something, you can just stay there. So
it does it based on context, like cursor context?
Yeah, well, I think so.
Okay, that's cool.
No, I guess it doesn't. So, I don't know what'll happen if I break this out into a separate window. Sometimes the behavior is different if your dev tools are in a separate window versus docked. But so yeah, at first I thought that was silly, but I needed it recently to find something that was showing on hover. So here's the one that searches functions in a current file. This is one I have on here, but I haven't used. So that's why I wasn't even aware of it as I was saying it earlier. But so Command Shift O.
Oh wow.
There's the list of methods in your file along with the line numbers for them. So this is one that I learned while I was doing this, and I'm completely unfamiliar with. But I've got it in there as one that I need to learn because I'm always just Control F searching through the file.
Do you have to navigate down to the file you're looking at, or does it search everything kind of in the website?
With this one, it'll only search the file that you're in. Okay. Yeah. But you can, I mean, you can filter, right? So, like, so it'll filter stuff that matches in some way. So all of those are, I mean, probably that's a very small subset. If you want to see a lot more, you can go into the shortcuts option over here. There is something sort of interesting about this and the way it works, though, which is, let me reload this page real fast. All right, so I've got the Sources tab open, and if I look at shortcuts, oh, maybe it's working different now. No, I think it still is a little bit like this. You'll see, for example, I don't have the console shortcuts listed here, even though they exist. But once I've loaded the console, then where are they?
It's just a different, yeah.
They
debugger wasn't.
Well, they'll load new shortcuts sometimes.
I see the console. The head of the console, but not the shortcuts. The link at the bottom says full list of keyboard shortcuts and gestures.
Yeah, that takes you to a website. But yeah, they, at least on mine, they'll progressively load them as the different panes load, and that's because I was actually digging into that because I was considering writing a plugin that will like show you shortcuts if you take an action that has one, and they only actually load the shortcuts into that list when that tab is initially loaded. So if that tab hasn't been loaded in some way, then the shortcuts aren't going to exist in it. All right. So next thing is you can set breakpoints for DOM tree modifications, including attribute changes and element removal. So this is a really powerful way to find something that's changing your DOM. So for example, if I had code that removed this paragraph element or something, I could set a breakpoint here on any changes to the subtree, on attribute modifications on this paragraph element, or if this node gets removed. And what will happen then is if that action takes place, it'll break at the point in the JavaScript code or whatever that took that action. So you'll be able to know what was making that change happen.
Does it leave you in your, let's say you're doing some manipulation with jQuery, does it leave you in the console, does it leave you, or in your source view, would it leave you in the code that you wrote, or would it leave you up in the jQuery library somewhere?
Yes, I do. It'll take you probably all the way down to the jQuery library. They have, well, this isn't even the black boxing. They have something in, I think it's in Canary right now that they've been working on. I have not played around with this, but they have something that will let you. Let me look. They might have it here as a setting for experiments or something. There is an option that they've been playing around with of break on your code as opposed to the jQuery, and I think it's only for jQuery that they've done it, but it's intentional to like, hey, break into my code. I don't care where jQuery did all the hookup because that's such a pain in the butt anyways. Now I will say, while we're talking about that, and this is something I don't have in here, but I do want to add is when you're debugging code, like stepping through code or something. This probably fits in my debugging section more, but there's this option here called Manage Framework Blackboxing that exists in your settings. So if you know the name of your jQuery file, for example, jQuery .js or jQuerymin, whatever, you can black box that. And what that means is when you have a breakpoint in your code and you're stepping through, it'll skip over anything that jumps down into that jQuery file and just stay in the layers outside of it. So you can create these framework black boxing for any framework that you need using a little bit of a wildcard type pattern there. It might be a regular expression, I'm not sure. And then keep from jumping down into your framework code. So that's a really powerful piece of what they have. I haven't used it before, as I just learned about it recently too, and I'm looking forward to a chance to use it soon. But all right, while we're talking about development, I don't know if anyone here uses editors or uses multi-caret support in anything that they do, but the Chrome DevTools support multi-caret, just like most other modern, really powerful editors. What that means is, for example, I can click and then hold Control or Command and click in multiple places and get multiple carets that will all edit something at the same time. Or if you want to do it, probably an easier way a lot of times is you can just do like Command D, like I'm doing here, and that'll select the next instance of your match string, and you'll edit all of those, and Command U will unselect them if you went too far. What? I've got Command D selects the next instance of your highlighted text or whatever, so and you can edit all of them at once. Yes.
I imagine you could, after you, like, say you didn't want one in the middle, then you could select them all and then go back and hit Command and click on that one to unselect the middle one.
I don't know. Nope. Doesn't look like it. Looks like if you want to do it that way, you're better off doing the holding Command down or Control down and selecting them individually.
That's a bummer.
Yeah.
But it's still really cool.
Yeah. All right. The console. Let's talk about the console for a little while. So the console object has many more options than just logging, just console.log, right? That's what anyone who's worked in it's familiar with. But using them can really level up your development. So let's go over just some of the different options that you may or may not be aware of. Console.clear is very simple. So if you have stuff already logged over here for whatever reason, and pull up the console this way so that it doesn't get in the way. I'll log some content. That console.clear to just clear it out. So useful to put in your code maybe right before you're getting into that area that you're troubleshooting so that you don't have to dig through the console for everything. Console.assert, basically it's just like any test framework or anything else, right? You assert and you assert your expression, and then the object is what you want to log, I guess, when that happens. It can also just be a string, I think. So it'll throw an error and a stack trace if the expression passed into it is false. That's a useful way if you're trying to debug something. Maybe you have something that's causing some sort of bug, you don't know why, or you think there's a state that it might be reaching, but it's not throwing its own error. You could throw a console.assert in your code to force a stack trace and an actual console error to occur. Console count with a label. This is incredibly useful in loops. So basically what will happen is it'll log to the console the number of times that count has been invoked at that line with that specific label. So do this in an odd way. Give it a label. And it'll tell you how many times it's been invoked with that label. So if you have a loop that you're going through and gets different items in, and you want to know why, or you're wondering if for certain people, certain instances, it's happening more often than others, you can count specific label and figure out how many times it's happening. So console profile, and this has an optional label argument and profile end. This is a way to programmatically start and stop profiles for CPU profiles over here. So if you want to just capture a profile to figure out where the performance issue is in your code, you don't have to try and time clicking this in your code. You can hook right into it and start that. Console time and time end. This is much simpler. Basically just starts and stops a timer for the specified label. So when the timer stopped, it'll tell you how long that's elapsed between the start of the timer and the end. And then this is really nifty. I didn't know this. They, by default, inside of the console will alias $, and then $, and they alias to document.querySelector and document.querySelector all. So if you don't have a library like jQuery on your page, you can still use this to grab everything or grab one specific item because it's just built right into the console. Copy is pretty cool too. So copy is when you need to take something out of the console. So copy will just, whatever you pass into it, it'll copy it to the clipboard. So if you need to cut and paste something like an element, you see me use %0 or $0 here, that refers to the last item that you selected or the item that was highlighted. So
I'm assuming that, like, if you're in a breakpoint, you could copy out a JSON string or something like that.
Copy?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can copy whatever you pass into it. So
That's cool.
Yeah.
Rather than having to highlight, like, if you're in a service response, rather than having to highlight the JSON itself, I can just go in and copy data.
Yeah. Monitor is pretty nifty. I haven't used it before in any of my code. It's another one I ran across while studying for this. So monitor, you pass in a function name, and when that function is called, it'll just log a message with the method name and the arguments that were used for it. So that's a really easy way to figure out what's being called when your methods are called. Yeah.
Could you potentially, like right now, like monitor, say a particular function or I guess particular function, would you just reload the page or to see if how it ran when it first? I'm not sure. Yeah, say set a post message.
So that's probably one that runs only once. I don't know. Let me see if I can find one that'll run multiple times down in here. I'll bet this guy's going to run a lot. But is this inside of
That's what I was going to say. If it's a closure.
Let's see. Yeah, I think it might be in a closure. All right, hold on. All right. Let's see what happens. Let's continue running.
Wow. Huh.
So there you go. That's me hooking up the monitor to one of the methods right there. One thing that I've done in that respect, and this is probably more in the fun area of the talk, when I'm trying to monitor something, especially during startup, if I don't maybe have control of the scripts to go change them, or I'm just wanting to log something, I do something myself occasionally that's I haven't really seen other people do, which is I will set a breakpoint and then I'll make it a conditional breakpoint. And a conditional breakpoint will break if the statement in it is true.
Yeah.
So if I'm trying to just do something like maybe just log something for whatever reason, I might do a console.log element.style and false.
Oh, because it'll run every time.
And I'm never going to actually break on it, but I'm going to log that value. And you can actually take this farther. There's been a couple times where I've actually modified values of things inside of my breakpoint just as a way to change stuff. Oh, I don't want to go recompile this into debug mode, so I'll just set this conditional breakpoint, change the value to debug instead of release, and run it, and then it's in debug mode because that was part of the startup. So that's my own little trick. I don't think I've ever seen anyone else doing that. There's probably better ways to do it, is why, but all right. Have anything else? Monitor events, similar to monitor, except you give it an object, and when one of the specified events occurs on the object, it'll log the event to the console. So, and you can give it an optional array of events that you want to monitor. And I think it even has, if you look up the documentation for this, I think they also have some groupings of events as well. So you don't necessarily have to do everyone. Like I think there's like a grouping of like mouse events or something. It's a special string, and it'll log anything that's one of those events. All right. So performance and debugging. Some of the things that are really useful here, and again, focusing just on some of the tips and tricks, preserving the log. So this exists both in your console and on your network tab. And what this will do is it'll keep the log around between page navigations, so that if, say, like, especially on the network tab, I found it incredibly useful, where I wondered why a redirect was occurring, and I wanted to keep that logged and not have it disappear, so I could look at the network command. Just clicking preserve log keeps that there, so I can go back and look at it and go, I see how this redirect happened.
That's useful.
Right-clicking on any XHR request, I don't have any in this. But if you have any XHR requests in the network tab, you can right-click on them, and you'll have an option here to replay that request. So, yes?
I'm probably an idiot, but what is XHR?
XHR, XML HTTP request. So it's any request that basically it's not a reload of the page like loading it. It's just give me some data, and it's what single page web apps use. Yeah, Ajax.
Would a page potentially Angular page?
Yeah, Angular is pretty much all XHR requests. But yeah, you can rerun any of them from in here. So that's much lighter weight than, say, using Postman or something, if you just need to run a command again to check it. Here's one that, I shoot myself. I didn't know for the longest time, but it's really handy, is on your network tab, if you click on the columns up here, you can add other columns. So let's say you want to see the E tags that are getting generated for stuff. Well, instead of having to click into each one of them, you can just add the column and have it show up right there. Oops, didn't have focus over here. So, yeah, it's another one of those examples of stuff that I didn't know. It's just really handy, but would never have thought, oh, hey, of course this will work like other things where I can add some columns.
You realize now I'm going to start clicking. I'm going to be like, right click. Okay, no, triple click. Okay.
This is one I learned just last night. It sort of blew me away. Again, you can actually rerun the code in anywhere in your frame stack by right-clicking on it. So, for example, we had this transform element here before. Let's do this again. And I'll navigate away. So here's our call stack of what's happened. I could choose transform element and restart this frame from the top, or I could jump down to transform slides and restart the frame.
Wow.
And the code with the same arguments and everything just starts over from right there. So if you needed to step through it and figure out what's going on and your breakpoint was too far down, you can just restart anywhere in that stack and walk through it again. And of course now, what?
That was really useful. How did you get there again one more time?
So basically, if you have a breakpoint,
Yeah.
then you've got your call stack that shows up over here on the right side, and if you right-click on it, it gives you some options, and one of them is restart the frame. So first, select the frame that you want. So like transform element is the one I'm in, but let's say I wanted transform slides, which is one layer up, and I can restart that from the top, and it jumps right to the top of transform slides with the same arguments that it originally had. So that was one. Yeah, that one sort of blew my mind when I ran across it. Oh, you know what? I sort of missed this. I was going to talk about what they might be doing and why they're showing that history of changes.
Yeah.
One thing that you can also do, and we've already talked about it a little bit, is just work in the editor, right? You can make changes. So, for example, we could change this value right here and then save it. And what you'll see is this starred item up here. Well, you can look at, if you right-click, you can look at the local modifications that have been made to this file. And it'll show you, sometimes it can't figure them out, but it'll show you like the modifications one by one as individual items, and if you want to, you can revert back to the file before the modifications.
But it still shows by. Oh, you see. Okay.
I don't know why. I think it's, yeah. This is another one of those things. Yeah. It is supposed to revert back.
Canary. Blame Canary.
I'm going to blame Canary. I'm sure I've done something wrong. I've been having some problems with this behavior anyways, so it could be a Canary issue. It could not be. I don't know.
I have a thought. If you try one more time, because there's another button.
Yeah, that's interesting. So the other option there that you're talking about, it's apply original content. They do two slightly different but similar things. So apply original content it's supposed to restore it back to the original state, but keep the history of changes.
Yeah.
Whereas revert is intended to just bring you back to your original file without your history of changes. So if I click apply original content, what you see is actually a second change that took place.
Work, right?
Yeah. But it's a second change that's supposed to have taken place that then put it back to the original but kept it in the history stack so you could reapply any changes that you had.
I just wish it worked perfectly right now.
What?
I just wish it worked like that.
I don't know.
That was really cool.
Dangers of live demos. But I think it's more effective doing this live than a whole bunch of animated GIFs. So.
Yeah, this is good.
All right, we talked about rerunning code in the call stack. I'm tired of having sequential messages stacked in the console. So I don't know if you've run into that, but you get a whole bunch of log messages that are one right after the other. It'll stack all of them if there's nothing in between and they're all the same. There's a simple option for that, which I actually had to use today. Inside of the settings, you can show timestamps. And if you click the show timestamps button, then each one of them will have a unique timestamp attached to it, and they won't get stacked into one stack of messages with a number next to you telling you how many there were.
So taking it that normally combines all together the same.
Yeah.
Them into one message. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it gives you a count.
Yeah.
So like it'll say like I had a error that was happening every second earlier today on my thing. So I was watching it tick up like 1,000, 1,001, 1,002, 1,003, 1,004.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know something else. So I like enabled timestamps, and suddenly I got a huge queue of them.
So is that how you add a timer to your website?
Yes. No. Here's another one that I knew nothing about until recently. Incredibly powerful. Snippets. The Sources tab actually allows you to define, store, and run little snippets of JavaScript code that you can save. So these are ones that I've grabbed from other people. So it lets you store little useful utilities to run on any page. So for example, I grabbed this grep, which attaches a grep method to the object prototype. So if I right-click on it and run, then let's say I do document.capital. It now has a grep method. And I can search for, let's look for any reg. Oops. So let's look for any properties on it that start with L or have L in them. So there we go, location. You know, I can look for ones with P, and it'll search. I think by default it searches all the way down. So now we have path name, port, protocol, replace. So, but it's all, you can just store these in your browser and then invoke them anywhere. Another nifty one, jQueryify, this guy had. Very simple, just adds jQuery to a page. Now I have jQuery. So.
So, would you mind showing how you got to that? Because I have no idea how you got this.
Yeah. So maybe I'll make one in just a second. Okay. But basically, it's pretty simple. You know, you normally have your sources show up here on your sources. If you just click over to snippets instead, what I would do, and there's some tools that some people have, but they're pretty primitive to import a collection of them. I really want to bet it. Now that I know about this, I really want something to import and export them because I want them in all of my editors. Yeah. Firefox also has a similar concept that you can do, but you can just create a new snippet and give it a name, you know, whatever you want it to be, and then write whatever you want in your snippet. And save it. And it shows up, and you can run it at any point in time.
Is it stored within Chrome somewhere?
It's stored within Chrome,
so
yeah.
When you bring up Chrome next time, it will be there.
Yep.
Is it stored across your account?
No.
That's the one
That's the
thing.
exact question.
That's the one thing.
No, one of the, let me see. Oh yeah, I've got another one here that logs globals, so if there's any leaked globals, this will log stuff that it thinks are leaked globals. Grep, live reload.
I'm going to make a bookmarklet that loads a snippet.
No, one of the guys has something that's sort of like this, jump through a couple hoops to load a collection of snippets and export them and import them. There's some tools to do that. So these are a few resources that I found a good number of these snippets at. Wow, those break badly. But I first ran into these ones that Paul Irish had, and T-linked to this guy who had a lot more, and then this is a completely independent person with some. But yeah, it's an incredibly awesome thing. Another really cool thing, I don't know if you noticed it earlier, was when I did like Command P, for example, the snippets show up in my search list too. Huh. So that doesn't mean I can run them, which I really wish would work.
But you can't.
You just open the file to edit. I really, really wish that the behavior there was to just run a snippet, but
maybe you don't know. Maybe there is. Maybe there's like the star key in front.
Somebody also mentioned, yeah, there's some like complicated keyboard shortcuts to run a snippet. But it's another thing where you like jump through hoops. It's like you do the keyboard shortcut, and then you do something else, and then
versus you just right click.
Yeah. It was one that I said it's not worth the effort to learn.
Put a little test framework in there.
Oh yeah, you could slap a test framework in a snippet to run some tests on your code and log something out, or slap some performance logging in so that you can just add it in whenever you want on your page without having it embedded in the code. And it's this is another one of those things I ran across that I've hardly heard anything about, and I just said, oh my gosh, that is ridiculously powerful. This is a Canary feature, but both the network and the timeline tab have added the ability to do screenshots, and they work a little differently. So on the network tab, the screenshots only capture when the page is loading, but then you'll have a set of screenshots from the entire loading process, and you can see me like navigating backwards and forwards. Now in this case it's very boring, but if you have a more complicated loading, you'll be able to see what it looks like at every point during that stage. This is Canary, and there's a little screenshot button up here to enable the screenshots, and then it'll tell you about them. Another cool thing that exists here in Canary that, well, I think it exists in the main Chrome now too, it took them a while, is they put these lines in, which represent, I think in this case they're both right next to each other, but they represent when, I believe, your DOM content has loaded. And so they're color-coded to these guys down here, when your DOM content loaded and when your load actually finished on your page.
It looks like I have capturing screenshots on the standard version.
I think
They may have moved it over now.
What was the other place you had?
It also exists in the timeline.
Don't have in the timeline on this one.
And this one's a little different. So it's a button, or
Oh, damn it, I do.
it's a little guy right here.
Yeah.
You can click screenshots.
I do have it, different.
Oh, that's awesome.
They moved it up.
So I can pull the Canary off on that one.
Yeah.
This one's really sort of cool, but it works, again, differently. So this one, they try to capture as many screenshots as they can and then map them against the other activity on the page and tie them to when they were taking place. So I found it a little flaky on this page. Yeah.
I know they say not to do, like, don't do performance testing or like anything that, like, don't do that at the same time as you're doing functional, like, performance testing.
Yeah, because it's a pretty intensive process.
You're probably butting up against CPU.
Definitely. All right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Conceptually, what's the difference between the timeline and the network tabs? To me, they're both screens and stuff kind of loading. It's just kind of a different way, kind of different view looking at when the page loads.
Well, the network shows actual network requests.
Okay.
And the page load. The timeline will show anything going on, so the page may not be loading.
Okay.
And then you have to actually enable this because it takes a lot of resources for it to log this.
Yeah.
But what the timeline will log is just about everything going on your page.
I mean, you can
And then
do the different.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah.
But this is the sequence of everything that you did. So this is way more than network requests. This is like mouse events, etc., all tracked. Then you can what?
If you're filling out a form, like could you start it and start filling out a form, would it keep track of that?
Possibly. I'm not sure. Depends on if there's events attached to that or if it's causing paints or redraws of some kind. This will also give you, so there's quite a few different views and stuff here. You could have a whole talk just on this one page, but so this is the sequential view, right? And then you have, this is a flame chart is what they call it, and it's really broad right now. There's just too much being shown, but if I zoom in on an area, for example, this shows you the actual call stack from it. And one thing that never made sense to me was it said use WASD to navigate. I never understood where, and I always kept trying it, and it just didn't work. But if you're selected down into the flame chart, you can move back and forth using it, and W and S will zoom in or out.
pretty sweet.
And then if you use your arrow keys in conjunction, you can go up and down the actual calls or backwards and forwards. So
Does it zoom in on, like, go down to one of the littler ones and then zoom in? That's it? Does it zoom in? Oh, it doesn't. Okay. It doesn't like center on what you're selected on.
no, you have to.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what navigate backwards and forwards and stuff.
Is this what a flame chart?
Yeah, this is flame chart.
L-A-M-E.
Yeah.
They realize from had.
Yeah, it's really awesome.
It's fairly recent that they added it, I think.
It's been a couple years at least.
Is it?
Yeah,
Wow.
I've used it for quite a while.
Oh.
They've actually changed behavior a fair bit. But another really awesome thing that it'll do with the flame chart is on any given item, when you select it, you'll see them down here, and they'll tell you a lot of information, such as this one call to the key down event handler took 0.11 milliseconds of actual time for this guy. However, everything underneath him altogether took 3.76 milliseconds of time. And aggregated, most of that was in scripting, with about 10 milliseconds in painting. And if you expand this all the way, this is a problem I've always had. I can never figure out how to get it out of the flame chart type area again, once I've selected something. So I don't know how to like unselect. But when you initially capture a timeline, for example, before it's done anything else, it has a summary of everything down here and tells you where your time wins. So that's a very, very quick way, if you're seeing some performance problem, to narrow it down to, oh, we have a painting problem, or we have a scripting problem. You can go, oh, scripting took all of the time on this.
Can you drill down into some of the scripting examples like you had before? Like, was it showing the actual names of the functions?
Yeah, if you drill down into the into the flame chart, you can see the actual names of the functions.
It's a green, olive green color.
And it does link to the whatever file it's in too, which is nice.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Oh yeah, you know that, right?
Yep.
The line number is a line number. That's great.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. The timeline is amazingly powerful, and so that's one aspect.
Now, did you say?
You can also, and this is another nifty thing, is if you're looking at this, it'll show you how long it took to render over the time for each frame, roughly.
And that one's really helpful on animation.
Yeah, and so you'll see here lines telling you 30 and 60 frames per second. So it's saying this one here,
You blew it.
it slowed you down so you couldn't render at 60 frames per second.
All the Google guys will call that jank.
Yeah.
They're from the UK though, so I don't know what that translates to in American.
And you can also get a really good feel here. Let me get rid of this. It shows up both up here and down here, but if you click the memory to show the memory, this will let you know if you're having like memory problems. Maybe you're not freeing objects correctly, so you're causing all sorts of garbage collection. You'll see like the sawtooth behavior here, because when it drops down, that's garbage collection. So that's a very powerful way to get a feel for if you're having problems with that. So going back to the network tab for a minute, there's a filter option up here if you haven't used it, which you can filter just by a string, filter just those network requests. But there are a lot of other filters that you can apply. And so if you try, like let's try larger than, you'll see just by typing L, it gives me this option of larger than. And now I can find what network requests were larger than 10K
cool.
and filter by that.
You had a couple hundred files.
Right.
A couple hundred requests.
So, just play around because you don't know what. You can sort by filter by domain if you have stuff that came from different domains, right? So it'll give you any options that exist for that letter if you're in there, but It's a really powerful way to filter some of that stuff. Talked about timeline a little bit. We'll go back to it. Try and highlight a couple specific things. It's incredibly powerful. It's also incredibly confusing, at least for me. I spent a lot of time learning the basics of the flame chart and other stuff because it was not obvious to me. But it's worth a session by itself. A couple interesting highlights. This one I think is canary specific at this point in time. If we go to the flame chart and zoom in, it'll actually show you these are the individual frames and how long it took to render them. And any of them flagged with this little red mark here, that's the jank he's talking about.
They actually put it in there. That's awesome.
So that's saying that that frame took longer than, I think it's like 18 milliseconds to render. So it made your browser look a little jittery. So that's a really nifty feature to help you quickly identify the jank and tie it to what's going on in the flame chart. And then another one that I've run across myself, and it took me forever to find the answer to, and there's one example right up there, and here's another, are these little exclamation marks in the timeline showing you what's going on. What that means is that something inside of this event forced an asynchronous layout. So it forced the browser to re-render the layout. So maybe it had to compute the offsets or something. That means, that's generally pretty bad because when you have to force that, then your browser has to go and actually lay everything out on the page where it needs to be. If you can avoid that and draw everything and then only do a layout once, you're going to get much better performance. But yeah, it's not intuitive. It doesn't tell you what it is when you hover over it. You end up just Google searching for a little exclamation mark on the timeline. What does this mean? All right, so just a few more, and we're done. It's DevTools all the way down. So if you're not familiar with this, another one of those things that sort of blew me away but was really, really cool. I had to break my DevTools out of my DevTools to do this. You have to have them as a separate window for this to work.
This is where Exhibit would come in.
What is that?
I heard you want some DevTools in your DevTools.
So the DevTools are just an HTML app themselves. And so I just opened DevTools on my DevTools.
What? How do you do that?
I just, the same way you would open DevTools normally, but you do Command-Option-I or Control-Shift-I on Windows, Control-Shift-I with the broken out DevTools window, and now I can, for example, let's go to the Elements pane. I can select, come on, is that going to work? Why won't you click?
There's a keyboard shortcut for that, you know.
I don't know if it works over here. Let's see. Hey, it does. Look at that. I can select it. See it over here. I can now apply style if I want to. I can change the color. I can.
No, you can't.
So how deep can you go with
Yeah.
Font size 20 pixels. Let's
what happens if you open too many?
let's transform by like 20. What's the right? You know what the right thing is? Is it percent? Is it degrees? It's not right. What?
Well, I was just saying stuff.
Percent? I don't think.
Yeah.
Do I need to say rotate? Oh, I think I need rotate, right? Oh, I think that's what I need. Then it's degrees, right? No, it is. It's not going to work. I don't know why it didn't work. But yeah, DevTools are just another web app. So if you need to investigate them for whatever reason, or you just want to have some fun playing around and mucking around in them, you can play around in them to your heart's content. So it's sort of ridiculous, but there you go. there are some people, I mean, there are people who have done things like skin the dev tools to apply their own styles. And you can go download styles for the dev tools if you want it to look like Zenburn or whatever your theme is that you prefer.
That's the DevTools CSS files and gets used. Not something you're going to explore now.
Right. Inside of, you can enable the DevTools experiments. I don't know if this exists in Stable. I know it exists in Canary. But this is a flag in Chrome Flags. And then, oh man, how do I pull up my DevTools window?
Command tilde.
Is it? It's not. No, I know that's what I thought, but I don't think it's doing it. Oh, there we go. Okay. And what that'll bring you is additional options in your settings if you enable experiments. So then you can apply whatever their experimental settings are. Might let you step into asynchronous stuff, material design, which I tried and I didn't see something. Maybe I didn't do it right. I don't know. The layers panel, which I've never gotten to make any sense.
Is that the 3D one?
It's an attempt to be like the
Okay.
Firefox 3D,
Yeah.
I think, but I don't get it. It doesn't work for me. It doesn't work the way I would expect. And then other things that I've not worked with at all. Allow custom UI themes. And in the end, let's just be absurd. This gentleman here has actually created ASCII video content. Oh no, it's not going to work, is it? Oh, it's probably going to be too slow here. That will play in your DevTools using the console logging, and there you can actually do colored output in the console log. So
Yeah, you can style the output.
So let's see if this works. Oh wait, wrong thing. All right, let's see here. I'll dock this again so that we're it is sort of working.
I see that it's running, but I'm just wondering where the content is.
Yes, we're being rickrolled.
I can't hear the audio. But...
Yeah, you can see his little video there, but come on, work. You can do it.
It's trying real hard.
Not with this internet. It's like this is not going to happen. You can see it saying no.
Yeah, it's like,
Absolutely not.
I'd love to help you, but
Well, you guys will just have to try that one on your own. You can go check out his site.
Will these slides be posted up? Or a link to them?
yeah, I'll post them on Meetup and also on Google Plus and wherever else I can throw stuff.
Sure. I have them on GitHub. I'm going to include a lot of links on the GitHub page once I get this finished. But all right. So that was it for me.
All right. So I won't try. I'll try not to take up too much of your time, but I'm going to talk about Chrome apps.
Project.
Yeah, actually, I guess I will. Let's do
It's like a sad lion.
present to everyone.
He is a sad line.
All right, and if you will turn off your audio.
John.
Perfect.
Here, you can plug in if you want.
And oh yeah.
You're gonna have to.
Oh,
We'll have to switch.
we'll have to switch.
Poor Cecil.
Poor Cecil the lion. All right. One of these. Okay. Oh. Okay. is which screen am I sharing? We want this one. Okay. So, how many people here are familiar with Chrome apps? Perfect. Okay, so in the past, Chrome apps were kind of divided up into specific things. There were extensions, which, if you mentioned the color picker, there's all sorts of extensions that people have written. There were themes, and then there were two kind of different apps, is what they call them. There was packaged apps and hosted apps. Those things still all exist, but they've kind of rolled extensions and the apps into one thing. They're called Chrome apps. Let's see here. And I do have a repo that I've put together. All the links and things are here. And it's not fully complete, but it's close. So I'll probably try to wrap it up. I'm going to be on an airplane tomorrow morning. But so Chrome apps in general, the idea is you have your web apps, you have your mobile apps. This is kind of a middle-ish ground. It gives you access to some things that you can't necessarily do with a web app that's hosted by you. It gives you access to some SDK and API calls that Chrome and Google have provided to do things like file system. There's some overlap with some of the new web technologies that are happening, like service workers, where you're getting offline support and things like that. The benefit, though, is there's a marketplace for them, and if you have Chrome, there's this apps, and so you can see I've got a bunch installed. These are all things that you could theoretically write the app for and provide it to someone through the web store. And it is, like, since this is a developer-specific meetup, there is a $5 fee to be able to post things to the web store. That's like one time. It's not like Apple where it's every year, and it's not like the Android store or Play Store where it's $25.
$5 for every app to publish, or $5?
It's $5 to be a
member.
Console developer. You get access to the console at that point.
Okay.
So, if you like, I was telling Jared, I made the mistake. I paid the $5 under a email address that I hardly ever used, and I forgot the password. So, I'm having to figure out how to get to that. But if you have a business address, sign up with that, not with your personal account. And I can, let's see, I think I have a link on.
But it's only $5. It's not a huge.
It's not a huge deal. Under the publish is where it's the Chrome Web Store Developer Dashboard. So if you go to add a new item, you'll have to go through and pay at some point.
And what's the purpose of $5?
So the $5 is just so that you can be so you can list things on there. It doesn't. There's no fee to actually post things. But it does. So it gives you access to things that are, I think in the README here, I called it a near native experience. So it's still running in a browser, but you get some benefits of it's not a browser. Like, you're not just taking a browser and plopping your app into it. There's some extra features. It's more like a trimmed down browser with more features. So it gives you what will feel like a native app to someone. So just as an example, if you look at so like some of these, like the Chrome Dev Editor, when you open it, it doesn't open in the browser. It opens in, if I can bring this over, it opens in its own window and has its own. Let me move.
Yeah, I saw it over to the right.
Can you see?
Going down, I can see it.
Does the?
trying to get to their desktop? Or?
Oh, there we go. So it has its own icon. Windows is the same way. It's gonna look like an app, not, oh, I opened a new browser window. So there's a benefit of visibility. You're not like, you're hiding the fact that it's just a web app. You can also write native client code, which I don't know if anyone does that, but that's another option. So to get started, really, let's see. Got in the repo, I start out, close some of this stuff down. Okay. You really start out with 3 things that are required to have a Chrome app. And development of these things is super easy as far as like being able to test it and things like that. So the first thing you need is a manifest. And the bare minimum is you have a name, a version. The manifest version for current Chrome apps will always be 2. And then you have something that describes the action that needs to be taken during the launch phase. So in this case, there's a JavaScript file that will tell it to open a window, and we'll look at that one. So part of it is, let me close these down here. So part of it is the manifest. Then you have some script that tells, essentially it's bootstrapping the app. It's not the script where you're going to do all your actual code. This is really just setting up as far as the life cycle of the app. And so in this case, there's hooks for opening a window. So this is what, this one is simple. It does that. It's going to open this HTML page, and so here's a blank HTML page. To load this into Chrome, if you go to More Tools and Extensions, and I believe you have to turn on developer mode to get this. I'm not going to turn it off just because I think that's right. But you'll get an option that says load unpacked extension. So unpacked means it's, you haven't minimized it in any way that makes it portable to the web store. So you just point it at a directory where you've set up, and like the README isn't going to affect it. It's not like it's parsing. It's looking specifically for the manifest and then following the chain off of that. And so what you get is you get an extension in your Chrome that you can launch. And of course, it came over to the other window. So here's a blank HTML page. You get the ability to inspect, so you can use the Chrome DevTools to inspect things in there. And it's essentially 2 things. It's the window, and then you'll see this URL, URI, and that hash is just essentially it's whatever the system gave the extension. So the cool thing is, so now that you have that, you can go in and update the HTML or whatever code you're running, and then just reload, and it popped back over here. But, yeah, I should just set it to mirror, I guess. And there's your update. So that's the bare minimum. But hopefully you can kind of see, okay, well, if it's web, I can write whatever web stuff I want. So let's kick it up a notch here, and if we then look at, all right, so let's add some more to it. You can do things like give it a cool name, and then you can give it a couple of icons. You can actually put all like tons of sizes of icons. I just put 2 because that's the examples they give. So, and then you can dump them into a some type of folder structure that makes sense. And, same thing there and same thing here for the most part. I added a few things that just for people to mess with. No harm deleting. It's loaded in the stuff that it needed. So it's not going to delete it off the file system or anything. So if you load this one, so I've got an icon now, looks a little more legit. And then when I launch it, you can see, it's going to use your icon for the actual app. So you can, like, your legitimacy of your app just, skyrocketed if you do a couple easy things. And it's not like I didn't do anything cool with the page, but in this case, it's an HTML page, right? Okay, so that's great. Once you get past the it's an HTML page, there's a lot of stuff you can do with it. And so I don't want to take up a whole ton of time going over this. I just kind of want to. I did this like one of our first meetings ever. I did this, and the APIs and things have changed. So I figured it would be nice to just touch it again and show it what it can do. Probably one of the easiest way to kind of discover what can be done is to look at the options that you can set in the manifest. So here, here's the required ones, recommended. So one of the cool things you can do, does anyone have to deal with internationalization at all? So as far as reaching a broader range of people, you can actually really easily internationalize your app with and I'll just kind of show this here. All you have to do is have a folder called locales and have a message JSON, and then you can reference those values anywhere in your app, including which I was like going through this. I'm like, oh, this is cool. Including just about anywhere it does string replacement. So here's, CSS, you can use the string replacement to do localization even with your styles. So to me, that's pretty powerful given, okay, I have web tech and I can do just about anything with it. Okay, now I have an international enabled app without too much trouble. So the manifest also has things like Bluetooth, which I believe this one is only available for Chrome OS at the moment. Somewhere here, I think it says that. Maybe not. That's not one of them. Okay. It says it somewhere here, I think. But maybe only works. Oh, just not on Linux. Okay. Sorry. Anyway, so you can deal with Bluetooth things. Commands is like keyboard shortcuts, so you can actually like wrap in keyboard shortcuts for your app specifically. It's limited to, I think you have to have either Control or Alt or Command on Macs, and then something else. You can't override like Command P or the print command. You can do close though.
Can you do keyboard movements, or would that be somewhere else?
No, I think if you did Command and the arrow keys, that works.
What if you wanted to use it to move something on your page? Or would that require some other script?
That would really, that's just a listener. Like you would do it the same way you would do on a normal web app.
Okay.
Like you would just respond to those events. But like these would be like, I want to run functions. I want to run like processes when you do this. So like it can be something simple like open a print dialog, or it could be, when I do this, go calculate the totals of that and put it over here and draw, all sorts of whatever you want to do. File system stuff, so there's a lot of cool things. Kiosks allow you to do kind of like if you had like a terminal that you just wanted people to interact with, you could use it in that regard, and it kind of closes off navigation and things like that.
Used to do that in prisons.
Yeah.
License access.
Yeah.
Install a legal research software at the prisons, and they wanted every possible option turned off.
Right. You can't do anything.
You can only search for statutes and stuff.
And so there's a ton of things you can look at here. WebView has to do with loading remote resources into it, like almost like an iframe, and handling those. So the manifest kind of reveals like some of the cool things you can do, and then the app lifecycle. Just to touch on this, since people may care, I'll bump this up. How about that? So it's loading a web page, then it will run that background script to launch the app, and then you can see kind of what happens during the typical life cycle. So you can do multiple scripts to handle all the different setup and things like that. But for anything I've done, I kind of just do open a window and go from there. But you can look. The documentation is really good, and because it's been updated since a long time ago, you'll find that it's fairly consistent. Okay. Hopefully, I didn't mean to close the window, but I did. So, all right, let's go back to this. All right. Sorry for anyone who's watching this video. I did not mean to do that. Okay, so there's a ton of things you can discover just by looking at some of the manifest and some of the APIs that they bubble up. Let's see. So we looked at the scaffolding. The foundations are those pieces in the script. So there's some restrictions. You'll kind of stumble across them. One of the things you can't do is do inline scripts. And you'll see like the downside to debugging stuff like this is that, all right, so if I do that, that seems fairly harmless, right? If I launch it again, though, let's see here. Reload, okay. Oh, maybe if I do something in here. There we go. Okay. I guess it helps to actually run a script. So they don't allow inline scripts. Everything has to be imported. So as long as you have an href external to the page, you're fine. That becomes a somewhat problematic because if you're, let's say you have, let's take a Google technology, Polymer, and you're trying to do a Polymer element, the script is in line with the Polymer element. You can't load a Polymer element that has that. They've come up with a tool called Vulcanize and CRISPR, and there's ways to get it through there. And so typically, though, if you're doing that, you're going to end up needing some type of build system. And so let's see here. Oh, and I didn't build this one out, but I have one that I've pre-cooked here. Yeah. So in this case, this one is a it's a Polymer app. So just for the sake of argument, I've put a paper fab just so to see that Polymer can work in here. If you load this, background, okay. So if I point this at the window HTML itself, which is loading the Polymer element, you'll see that this will not work. or you'd think it doesn't. Let's see. Okay. So in this case, you're going to get all sorts of errors about not being able to load it because of the content security. But if you run, so in this case, this is based. So this is vulcanized and crisped and something else, I think. Vulcanized, and renamed. But so Vulcanized will take out the inline scripts and put them into a file based on the same name as the HTML file. So this is all the Polymer scripts that would be included. So if I reload now, and it comes back over here, you'll see now I have the paper fab that I put in. So Polymer works, you get all the material design and stuff. So you can do a Polymer app inside a Chrome app and run with it. You just have to have a little bit of a build process to do so.
I'm not sure what is that? It was a red dot to me.
Yeah, so it's called the floating action button in Polymer.
Yeah.
Let's see. I don't know how to explain it. Polymer is a web component framework from Google to allow people to develop web components fairly quickly. Okay. It comes with we can look at that too. They just got done with their summit today. So like the paper fab is part of the paper elements. You can do things like paper dialogue and
like material design.
So Polymer has implemented material design. So material design is its own defined design framework. Polymer has implemented that framework.
Now I know where else is. Of course.
It's in Amsterdam, so I would doubt it, but we'll see. So you can use Polymer, you can use Angular. It's the same concept, though. If you have inline scripts anywhere, you have to pull those out. And there's not really, I don't know that there's a library that would require that other than Polymer, but like at Angular, you're obviously going to include the scripts themselves. But you can do MVC stuff. You can do kind of whatever you want in there within the restrictions of the content security policy. Other than that, so the other thing, I didn't get a chance to test this, but if you wanted to do things like authentication or more complex data services, you can definitely use something like Firebase. And I'll probably work an example up for that too if I can figure out how to do it without like wasting my license on it. So, but yeah. So, any questions on Chrome apps at all? Yeah.
Well, actually, I'll let somebody else go first because I've been asking a lot of questions. Somebody else says.
Is there anything that you could do just in the browser that you can't actually do in the apps?
There are some restrictions.
They'd be more security related, I'm assuming.
It's like cross-site scripting and things like it doesn't enable you to do things like cross-site. Like it doesn't provide you like a server side.
There's a good example right there. You can't use eval.
Yeah.
So while most people wouldn't be using that, that may have a restriction on
Right.
the library that you use, because some libraries might implement eval to do low level.
Yeah. So like you can do things with like Ajax calls. You just have to, like there's some weird ways you have to handle it that you wouldn't have to do in the browser. And that's really just, it's their way of protecting the end user from people who would want to do malicious things with the extensions to whatever extent they can. I mean, people have written extensions that have done really bad things, and within reason they will go remove those. But and this is the web view is one. I think this is the equivalent of what would be called a hosted app at this point. And really, I think that's what, like, Code Envy, it's really just a link to their site. Like, it's not an app, but it allows them to, you can't do billing or any, like, I don't think you can charge for a hosted app because it's like, you're saying, I'm not going to include any Google Pay stuff. It's just a link. When you set up like a Chrome app that's like the packaged one, then you can actually tie into the Play Store, like the billing and things like that. You can do in-app purchases. You can, it gives you kind of the same features that the Android store would have. So I don't know.
What's the support for this on Android like?
So they do talk. That was one
I know
thing.
they've been working to expand it. So I didn't know if you knew where it was at.
So they do. They essentially say run it through Cordova, but I'm not entirely sure. I didn't try it. I was like, okay, it said Cordova, so I'm like, okay, I get it. But I think it does give you. Like I would be interested to see what this does, because I think it would be an interesting, like, theoretically you could go. I wrote a Chrome app and then I released it to the like mobile store too. I'm not entirely sure what the mobile side of it is. Like, I don't know if it's something where you get native code that you can then go put on the store, the various app stores, or if it's just a Chrome app that runs on the mobile device. But maybe I'll investigate that and see what I can find out.
Assuming if you run it through Cordova, it's just doing the same thing, which is sort of wrapping it in
Yeah.
a browser.
Kind of like a web view.
Yeah, wrapping
Yeah.
the web view. That's
But
what
so
it is.
the only reason I'm not entirely sure is because it says it's a tool chain based on Cordova, not like. So I'm not I didn't read through this at all, but I would assume if it's Cordova, it's you're going to get something that's a distributable.
Well, it looks like, scroll back up. Keep going. I wanted to see, yeah, the CCA. If you install that, I guarantee you'll see Cordova as one of its dependencies,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
NPM. Yeah.
I was going to see if it has mobile manifest. Yeah, I would imagine
It's
you
it's,
end up.
it's just like
Oh yeah, there it is.
Ionic
Okay.
or something.
Yeah.
It
yeah.
just wrappers Cordova's calls with other stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I didn't even read this because I was like, well, if it says Cordova at the top, I know what it's doing. But the nice thing is, I think what they're probably doing is their flavor, like whatever the Cordova portion is probably wrapping those APIs somehow. I guess. I mean, I don't quite get why it would be different, but
Google built a little app called Keep, which is just
Yeah.
a simple little like a to-do list or grocery list or whatever.
Yeah.
It's really slick between. I've got it on Android and Chrome and stuff. I presumably use this Cordova type structure.
yeah, I'm never real sure. Like, because you could easily, if you have a backend that you've written for an app, you could do native development and use the API that you've really, so it's always hard to tell. Like, I don't think that, I guess you could try to inspect the Cordova stuff while it's running.
This isn't that exact same thing, but on that vein of how they would do that is Google. There's a really good article on Ars Technica. That was how Google Inbox shares 70% of its code across all of their variants, the iOS, Android, and web app versions of the product. But,
So anyway, the next step after you get your app done is to put it up on the web store, and they walk you through how you have it. It gets zipped up, and there's at least a certain amount of safety in your code that people won't necessarily be able to like dig into it. I wouldn't count on that though. Like, if you're making API calls, that's great. If you're doing like all sorts of business logic in it, you may want to think of a different way to do that.
that's right. I had to go read the article again. The way they do it for Inbox, at least, is totally different. They have a tool called Java to Objective-C. Yep.
Okay, so maybe this is a good point to mention. Speaking of that, we have a conference coming up in November on the 7th. It's the first Saturday, I think, in November, called DevFest NC. And you'll probably, if you're on Google Plus, you'll see things meet up. I'll try to post stuff on there. It's a ticketed event, and I'm trying to kind of gauge what the ticket cost will be. But we've got so far somewhere around 15 people that will be presenting. Some of those are from Google. It's a laid back developer conference. It's not specifically Google stuff. It's really more for the general developer community. It's on the 7th of November at the North Carolina School of Science and Math up in that direction. Somewhere up 147, go that way. I'll try, like, if you're interested in speaking, let me know. It's open to whatever topics might be of interest to people in the developer community. So I was going to say, we have a guy who works for a company locally that does what's called automated programming. And apparently they do it's like a drag and drop for whatever type of mobile interface. Like, I'm interested to see it because I'm skeptical that this will work, but
Downtown Raleigh?
yeah, I think so. Yeah. So we've got a lot of interesting, just kind of random things. There will be some presentations or code labs on Polymer, if that's interesting. Trying to remember what others. Burr Sutter, if you missed his IoT talk for Triangle JS, I think he'll be doing one during the conference. Possibly the same one, but so I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. We've done this. Will be the 3rd year that we've done it, but that's kind of the plug for the video audience to check it out. Any other announcements, or anyone have or looking for a job that looking?
Yeah, I just got here actually on Sunday from Massachusetts.
And what are you looking for?
I'm looking for front-end development.
Okay.
It was a full stack .NET, but I'm trying to focus on front-end.
I was going to say, Novelist is a .NET like a C#.net.
That's a bunch of .NET shops. LexisNexis is .NET.
Yeah, well,
Good
so
solution.
far
and,
focusing, trying to find more
Front end.
front end specific, and then we'll see how it goes. I've got a couple calls so far, but if that sort of doesn't go well, then I'll probably open that up to do a full stack.
You were asking for booking things, is that right? Or am I misunderstood your question?
Say it again.
You're asking about people seeking jobs?
Yeah.
I am. I'm looking for like a QA position.
Okay.
Yeah. I've done Ruby and stuff, some JavaScript, but not nearly as much as you're doing here. So, yeah, I'm looking for, and I have cards if anybody's interested. Or if you know something, I'd love to hear. But yeah.
I'm looking for projects. I want,
Oh, okay.
I want like 3 to 6 month contracts. I don't want this, permanent, unless it's like the perfect job. Front end.
All right. And I would say if you're new here, not that I want to like throw people away from this group, but the Triangle JS group for front end is probably the best place. It's a large, like 1,100, 1,200 people in the group. It's a really good, I mean, I think I got 2 jobs from that, just going. So tomorrow night, I think they're doing lightning talks.
Yeah, actually, I'm planning to go there.
It's worth your while to go if you can. And Kyle Buchanan is I think he's one of the organizers, and you can just probably approach him, and they usually do like a job announcements at the beginning.
They do really cool stuff too, crazy stuff. Like one time they had a camera and they had like this light painting thing where this robot arm was swinging this light around, and they had this long exposure for drawing. It's crazy stuff.